They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. First, though, a reminder of our top stories this evening. Ukraine has fired British-made Storm Shadow missiles into Russia's Kursk region for the first time, according to a source. The Defence Secretary has said the UK will scrap 5 outdated warships, dozens of military helicopters and a fleet of drones to save £500 million. And inflation has risen sharply to 2.3%, its highest level in 6 months, driven largely by rising energy prices. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail's Whitehall editor, Claire Ellicott. Welcome and great to see both of you. So as ever, let's take a look at the front pages, starting with the Financial Times. Ukraine fires British-made missiles into Russia is their lead story. Front of the eye, UK defies Putin as Ukraine fires British missiles into Russia. Daily Mail also reports on the British Storm Shadow missiles, saying the Prime Minister Keir Starmer personally approved the missile strike. It's also the lead story for The Guardian. Their headline, Ukraine attacks targets in Russia with UK missiles for the first time. The Times also reporting on the British missiles being used in Russia with images of the explosions in the Kursk region. The same story makes the front of The Telegraph with more details on defence cuts in the UK after the government announced it was scrapping warships, military helicopters and drones to save money. Meanwhile, The Star takes a more practical approach, teaching its readers how to build their own nuclear shelter. And tributes to former One Direction star Liam Payne make the front page of the Metro, with friends and loved ones of the singer attending his funeral today. While The Sun reports on the reunion of One Direction stars for the funeral with the headline, All for One. And the Mirror too, farewell Liam, says the Mirror. But don't forget, you can scan the QR code that you'll see on screen during the programme and check out those front pages for yourself while you watch our guests. Coming on to, obviously, Liam Payne a little bit later in the programme, but Claire, Kevin, let's kick off with the defence news today, of which there was a plenty. Claire, first of all, Storm Shadows in action.
Yes, so for the first time, the Ukraine has been able to fire these Storm Shadow missiles, which are Anglo-French, into Russian territory. So this is the first time since the conflict began that this has happened, and it's a huge development in the Ukrainian war. It will give Kyiv a good, it'll come at a good time for Kyiv because they're falling behind on the battlefield. Russia have just announced that they've got these 10,000 North Korean troops, which are obviously is a huge blow to morale. So the fact that they can now use these missiles just after Joe Biden, the US president, has said that they can use ATACMS, an American missile in Russian territory. This is a big moment for the war, but whether it changes the dial, we think it's unlikely, but it is a big moment for the war and a big moment for Zelensky.
Yes, I mean, Storm Shadow has been used before, Black Sea Fleet on Crimea, which is internationally deemed, obviously, as Ukrainian territory. But this is a sort of a concerted effort now, isn't it? First of all, the US and its ATACMS, Storm Shadow, anti-personnel mines as well, the US announcing today. There's a sort of sense of impetus now, which the Ukrainians would argue is simply too late.
Yeah, and it probably comes because of Donald Trump's election. And 2 months' time, he could possibly cut off or channel much narrower the flow of US arms, the US being critical, absolutely critical in supplying Ukraine. The first question I wanted answered when it was announced, or it broke that Storm Shadows had been fired into Russian territory, was how many? And when it's up to 12, the Mail's answered it in the headline. But it is it's an escalation for the UK. because we're sucked further in, been supplying weapons, but T&Cs have been applied, have been able to say you can't use it into Russian territory. Well, now they can, and it's very interesting. It's only because Biden's changed his position in the White House, presumably because of Trump, because they rely on US navigation data, so they can't just go on their own. But as the Mail has, Starmer personally approved it. You'd like to think that would be the case, and the Prime Minister, but there is a risk in this, unquestionably, with Putin being very unpredictable, very reckless, very dangerous. And how does he now respond?
Indeed, UK defies Putin, Ukraine firing these British missiles into Russia. How does he respond? But the idea of using any form of nuclear weapon with Donald Trump coming in, who many deem to be unpredictable, many have ruled out, in fact. So this might be your window. Let's move on also to the defence cuts, shall we, as well, which feels. It's a strange timing in the sense that Russia has used its oldest weapons in Ukraine, and here we are, the Defence Secretary, ruling out scrapping, not mothballing, a whole series, of warships, drones, helicopters, which elsewhere might prove useful.
Yes, it's quite a debate. John Healey made these announcements today. The news has been overshadowed by the Storm Shadow news, but it is quite a big announcement. £500 million he's trying to save by scrapping some of this older equipment. There's a big debate about whether you need to modernise this equipment, but we have been debating non-stop whether Labour are going to get to spending 2.5% of GDP on defence, something they've said they'll do, but they've not set out a timetable for and have refused to be drawn on. So Ben Wallace has said that defence has been hollowed out under successive governments and the former Defence Secretary. I think that John Healey has, and made these announcements today, a lot of people who are concerned about defence spending will think this is a very bad thing. But actually there was a former Armed Forces Minister, James Heapy, who said it wasn't the end of the world, that actually we needed to modernise our equipment. But it doesn't sound like the right kind of mood music given all of the kind of, we've got the Middle East raging, Ukraine, they're having to use these weapons today. It doesn't seem like the right kind of optics for...
There felt a slight jarring that there we are. Ukraine is now using UK-supplied Storm Shadow missiles into Russia, and at the same time ships, drones and other equipment is being decommissioned here. But it does appear to be, as James Heapy is pointing out, mainly approaching its sell-by date. Wouldn't have been much use anyway. I think in the past, the UK, when it decommissions helicopters, warships and so on, often sells them to other countries, sometimes quite ruthless dictatorships and oppressive regimes. I don't know if any of this will be going Ukraine's way or whether it will be any use for them, but it did feel just one of those moments that felt slightly odd. But why waste money on rubbish equipment when you could spend that on something better going forward? And this whole defence spending issue, the whole point of being in NATO with 30 other countries is you don't have to fight anybody on your own. And Britain is one of the big defence spenders in the world, certainly in terms of the amount we spend. I mean, the US is probably bigger than the next 6, 7 countries combined. But we do spend more than the 2% NATO membership. And I think we're about 6th in cash terms around the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that many of the elements that were scrapped today, HMS Northumberland, badly damaged, cost an absolute fortune to get it back on. The Watchkeeper drones only started operating in about 2018. They were 8 years late. They've struggled to operate in poor weather conditions, limiting their utility. Rapid development of warfare means they're likely to be shot down. So, there's a redundancy, a speedy redundancy of weapon that takes a long time to develop.
Well, particularly if you're 8 years late.
Well, but this is the difficulty, isn't it? The procurement process is so slow in defence that how you future-proof yourself, as many businesses find, including broadcasting, but it's a very expensive thing to deliver and to make usable long-term.
Yes, and I mean, it's a problem governments have a lot, how to plan for the future when you're in for 5-year terms and you can only really think that far ahead. John Healey's obviously committed this defence review, and we'll get the results of that fairly soon. Lots and lots of people have been feeding into this who know their staff. So you would hope that Labour would come up with a good plan for defence, because it does feel a time in which you need to be thinking about the future. You have Donald Trump is going to be the US president. He is going to take, as we said before, an unpredictable approach to some of these conflicts. When we talk about NATO spending, we talk about what's happening in Europe, we talk about what's happening in Ukraine, we've got to make sure Britain is able to help its allies and also fight wars on perhaps lots of fronts in the future. It's actually a really big question what does happen with defence.
And one final thought, which is the US approving US anti-personnel mines today.
Yeah.
Hugely controversial for many people. It seems to be defensively where Ukraine needs to retreat, either in the Donbas region or in Kursk, which is part of its own incursion into Russian territory. The US trying to reassure people that these ones have a natural shelf life, so there's no legacy issue, which has devastated, large parts of the globe in previous wars.
No, absolutely. There are international treaties now banning landmines because of the number of civilians who are killed after the armies
and some of them look like
go.
toys that children pick up, so the number of children maimed by it is extremely high.
But getting them over just shows you, I think, Ukraine's losing the war. Russia is gradually grinding forward, and there's terrible. We read about the terrible casualties on the Russian side, but we don't read about the terrible casualties on the Ukrainian side. And Ukraine has a smaller population, so can't afford to pour as many people into the meat grinder that this front has become. I would really like to see and read more about up-to-date Ukrainian casualties, but it's almost as if, most UK papers, understandably, like most people in the UK and political parties, have taken the side of Ukraine. But I would like to know how many people they have lost, killed and injured. We read about the Russians, but how many Ukrainians?
Yeah.
There must be considerable numbers. And the mines, which you feel very uncomfortable about, they're going to be used defensively.
The cost of this war, in human casualty terms, in terms of cost of the military equipment, and in terms of the inflationary effects of what we've seen around the world, I'd like to see a figure for all of that as well.
The area they're fighting over now was just about a wasteland. Yeah. It's been completely blasted away.
Except for its rare earth minerals, of course. And,
No, you're right, down the long run.
Let's go on to assisted dying, shall we, which is in The Guardian. The mood. What is the mood music now, I suppose, is what I'm asking, in the sense that it's being rushed by some, senior veteran MPs.
Yes, so we have the mother of the House, Diane Abbott, who's the longest-serving female MP, and the father of the House, Sir Edward Lee, a Tory and a Labour MP, very Tory and a very Labour MP, have come together to reject this assisted dying bill, which is a private member's bill, so it's brought by a backbench MP, not by the government. And MPs are going to be able to vote on it according to their conscience. There'll be no party line. Tories won't vote one way, Labour won't vote one way. It's a hugely emotive issue. Everybody has very strong views on it. A lot of people haven't made up their minds, and there's not really a very good way of canvassing MPs to see which way they're going. A lot of the government, a lot of the cabinet have spoken out about their views on it, and actually I think there was a view that Labour would be pro-assisted dying and making it easier for people in pain to end their lives. And actually quite a few prominent people like West Streeting, the Health Secretary, have come out and said that they don't think that this bill is fit for purpose. There's lots of Tories who have concerns that there's not going to be enough time to debate this bill. And
well, how long do people have to debate it? I mean, it's very short, isn't it?
So it's got the same number of parliamentary stages a normal bill would have, but there's just not going to be as much time in the House to talk about it, and there's not going to be as much time to decide to debate elements of the bill, because normally they would go through committee stage and you would come up with a good plan as to answer people's concerns, because there's, it's just come up with these ideas. There's going to be a judge overseeing this. There's going to it's just not been worked out.
The term with the vote on the 29th of November, which is only the initial vote, the term that Kim Leadbeater, the MP, and her team now use is it's doable if all their promises turn up, which just means it's going to be very, very close.
Okay.
It'll be very, very close. And if it's close, I don't think there'll be enough momentum to get through a change like this. I could see a vote for it, but a narrow vote for it. and then the government will want an inquiry, a commission, a study.
Consultation.
A narrow vote will lead to hesitancy, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but you know, all the big social changes happened under Labour in the 60s. Decriminalising homosexuality, abolition, Sidney Silverman of the death penalty, and others. They were all individual MPs. Kim Leadbeater this time pushes it forward, but you need the government to actually be behind it too.
We'll watch that closely end of next week,
Abortion
obviously.
didn't steal, sorry.
That's the other one.
Liberal. Yeah.
Good memory of all of this. But anyway, lots more still to come. We will be looking at this story in The Sun as the friends and loved ones of the former One Direction star Liam Payne mourned the singer at his funeral.
Prime Minister Modi is the most popular politician in the country. He is expected to win his third term in these elections.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party, a promise fulfilled. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
He paid over 50,000 to traffickers to get him to America. Instead, he was kidnapped, tied up, and threatened by smugglers. A commando from the state force walks me through to a Mai Tai village on the front line.
Firing to civilians and they're burning our house.
We cross to the opposite side, held by the cookies.
When they fire, we have to retaliate.
Sky News get the full story first. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration.
The enthusiasm is palpable. The young desire change.
These elections are a pivotal moment for the country's economic and political history. The concern here is that the public healthcare system is inadequate.
In a prayer, she's asking God to help understand what happened. I cannot carry on. God, help me. He says his world has crashed. Like him, there are scores of families searching for their loved ones.
Too often have families endured such tragedies for the negligence not only by the administration, but also by spiritual people in this country. Free wherever you get your news. Even though it has few seats in Parliament, Kashmir is symbolic and very significant. It's often been called a nuclear flashpoint.
This may be the Premier League.
I'm not like everybody else.
But this duo have been in a league of their own. It's Haaland, a striker like no other.
Like everybody else.
Son, Starland, the Tottenham Hotspur.
Like everybody else.
That's just stunning. Wow!
Everybody else. Like everybody else. Like everybody else.
Manchester City, Tottenham on NBC and Peacock.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war.
This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Joining me again, the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Daily Mail's Whitehall editor, Claire Ellicott. Welcome back to both of you. Quick word about inflation, going in the wrong direction, impacting on interest rate decisions later.
Yeah, and
it's right at the top there, isn't it?
Yeah, top right. It would have been a much bigger story in the papers tomorrow if Storm Shadow missiles hadn't been fired at Ukraine. It's the nature of news. You know, what happens, what crowds others out. But no, the biggest rise for 2 years, up 0.6 to 2.3. It's bad in your spending power, but it also means the Bank of England is less likely to cut interest rates because, of course, its real aim is to squeeze inflation below 2%. So
and the
it's
problem
bad all round.
The problem is it's energy prices as well, which goes back to the winter fuel payments for people. We know the energy price cap's changing as well, and it all piles pressure back onto that decision that we had earlier in this Labour government.
Yes, it feels like we're having a rerun of some of the worst times of last year, and energy prices going up, house prices as well is doing some damage here, and we're looking at a winter in which some people have lost their winter fuel payments, and it's a worrying time for many, I think.
But it's not 11.1%.
No, this is very true. This is very true. Let's go on to The Sun, shall we? And in fact, many of the old red tops, as we describe them, leading on this, not surprisingly, all for one, the remaining members of One Direction back together. You know, for the first time since they last performed, well, not including Zayn Malik there, for the tragic news that we were all on for that night. When the news broke about Liam Payne's death in Buenos Aires, a hotel balcony in the Argentine capital, you know, it's just a reminder that 31 is no age at all, far too young.
Yes, and they call him their brother, which I think is so touching. And you see Cheryl Tweedy, who it was his partner. They've got a child together. She's obviously going to have had the worst day, and we were on for that moment. And he was only 31, and he died after he fell off a balcony in Buenos Aires. He'd been with his girlfriend. You know, there was a lot of reporting about how he'd struggled with the price of fame and how it had taken a real toll on his life. But today was a day for his family and his friends and his bandmates to mourn him.
I like that front page, actually. I think it's pretty stylish, that. It's no pictures of his parents, of course. And it's the same. It's the same with the Mirror,
paper,
which we've chosen to have his coffin, to remind it basically him. But it's you kind of, I think both are good front pages. And you look at it, and it's because he was 31, and it was kind of, I remember the night it happened and we were on, it was breaking, and you're thinking, is this really true? And the reports coming out of Argentina, have they got it wrong? Quite what has happened? And we still don't know exactly what happened, why he came to fall from that balcony. We know more facts now, but we don't quite know the definitive reason. But times like this, yes, you think of his bandmates, but you think of his child and the mother of his child, and you think of his parents and family, which is just awful to have somebody that had been so proud of him, and he was living a life they could never have dreamed of. And then it all ends tragically, with his death at such an early age.
And it's so touching the way the Mirror has got the floral tribute left by his 7-year-old son, Bear. His son was Cheryl Tweedy. It's a really touching front page.
Yeah, it's just genuinely sad, isn't it? Genuinely.
Yes.
OK, we will take a look at the weather now. Thank you both very much indeed. Here is the weather then. The weather will turn milder at the weekend as a storm system moves in, but the transition is likely to bring some significant disruption in the form of heavy rain, hill snow and strong winds. Before that, there is another system in the southwest which will bring some rain, sleet and hill snow to southern Ireland and southern counties even of England. This is likely to cause some challenging driving conditions for the morning rush hour. The wintry mix will spread eastward through the morning, reaching the southeast before clearing away to the near continent. For much of the country, it'll be a cold, frosty start to the day. Well, our press preview continues through the 11. We'll have more analysis and reaction after Sky News is told that Ukraine has fired British-made Storm Shadow cruise missiles into Russia.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers. We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America? People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal